28 years in prison. When you hear that someone has received a 28-year prison sentence, it brings to mind murder, rape, even stealing billions of dollars. So why was former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick sentenced to 28 years in prison? Was it justified, or was he railroaded? Let's examine his federal public corruption case. Does the punishment fit the crime? Public corruption is the catch-all phrase to describe prosecutions of political figures. It's generally used to describe political crimes like embezzlement, misuse of public funds, bribery, or stealing money. Kilpatrick did not have a single charge or conviction of embezzlement, misuse of public funds, or stealing any money. Nor were there any assertions or allegations of these crimes within any testimony, evidence, or discussions at the trial. Fact: Kilpatrick's federal case, nor any issues or convictions therein, did not involve the city of Detroit's bankruptcy in any way. Fact: Kilpatrick did not have a single charge nor conviction of bid rigging, steering, or fixing contracts. Fact: there was no financial loss whatsoever to the city of Detroit. No restitution was required. Wait a minute. No embezzlement? No stealing any money? No fixing contracts, and no loss to the city? Then why did Kwame Kilpatrick receive a 28-year prison sentence? The government summary of his convictions read like this. Kilpatrick was convicted of running a RICO organization, a criminal enterprise that used an intricate scheme through extortion by color of official right between the years of 2002 to 2008 to steer 10 contracts to his co-defendant, Bobby Ferguson, and that he took kickbacks and bribes, 20 years of his 28-year sentence. Fact: there were more than 3,000 city contracts moved through the city contracting processes between the years of 2002 to 2008. But this government-charged criminal enterprise was only concerned with these 10 contracts over this 6-year period of time? All the other contracts were performed legally outside of this enterprise. This is the first two-person criminal enterprise in the history of the federal courts. Fact: all of these 10 contracts were performed on time, on budget, and still serve the city of Detroit today. 2 of the 10 contracts won state and national awards after their completion. And one of these contracts moved Detroit out of a 30-year federal consent decree in its water department. Who did Kwame Kilpatrick extort? Fact: during Kilpatrick's case, more than 70 people testified. Not a single witness testified to being extorted by him. As a matter of fact, witnesses that represent the companies related to these 10 contracts were asked the direct question, "Has Mr. Kilpatrick ever extorted you?" They all answered no. One witness said, no, he was always professional. There must have been a lot of testimony about kickbacks or taking money, right? Fact: out of the more than 70 witnesses, only 3 of them said they had ever given Kilpatrick money. All 3 of these witnesses were facing 15 to 20 years in prison for their own crimes, completely unrelated to Kilpatrick. For their testimony, all 3 of them were given a deal by the prosecutors, including no prison time for their crimes. Witness 1 said, "I gave Kilpatrick money in August when there was snow outside. Then he declared to the court, 'I have dementia, I don't remember anything.' He was excused by the court, but still received the no prison deal for his testimony against Kilpatrick." Witness number 2, a 76-year-old woman, said, "I would meet Kilpatrick secretly in his office and give him money from my bra." This witness evaded paying taxes for 20 years and had casino gambling debts and activities for more than $900,000, but still received the no prison deal for her testimony against Kilpatrick. Witness 3 said, "I would meet Kilpatrick in a bathroom at a downtown restaurant and give him money. He choked on those words when it was discovered that there were cameras in the restaurant, and Kilpatrick had never been to that location." This witness stole more than $700,000 from a retirement pension fund in a fraudulent scheme, but still received the no prison deal for his testimony against Kilpatrick. I heard on the news that this case was about bribes. What about bribes? Fact: Kilpatrick was convicted of 1 count of bribery. This 1 count of bribery was for a check written by his co-defendant, Bobby Ferguson, at a fundraising event. Several other business persons wrote checks at the same event, but only the Ferguson check was called a bribe? Fact: there was no testimony nor evidence to support this 1 bribery count, nor was it ever presented to the jury at trial. The jury still found Kilpatrick guilty of this count, and this is the only count and conviction of bribery in Kilpatrick's case. The other convictions in Kilpatrick's federal trial relate to the Kilpatrick Civic Fund. Throughout 2003 to 2007, the Kilpatrick Civic Fund, a 501c4 social organization, raised more than $1.7 million. Kilpatrick was found guilty and received 7 years of his prison sentence for several counts of mail and wire fraud in connection with using almost $14,000 of the fund for what the U.S. attorney called personal expenses, adding up to about 0.8% of the total monies raised and expended by the fund. The government raised no issue with over 99% of the funds expended. Fact, there were no accusations or convictions of Kilpatrick taking any cash out of the fund. The personal expenses were over a 5-year period and were approved by the Civic Fund Board and their attorney at a formal meeting of the fund's board. Fact, the KCF was audited by a private attorney during the dissolution of the fund. The auditor sent receipts to several people to pay back monies to the fund that might be seen as personal. Although Kilpatrick and the KCF attorney strongly disagreed with the auditor's analysis, Kilpatrick paid back $13,953.01 to the fund in April of 2009 as to assure there were no issues with the fund moving forward. Kilpatrick reimbursed the fund prior to any indictment, grand jury, prosecution, or any mention of issues regarding the KCF in 2011. This is the sum total of Kwame Kilpatrick's public corruption conviction and the reason he received a 28-year prison sentence. Number 1. He led a criminal enterprise that in some way affected the procurement of contracts and influenced contractors to give Bobby Ferguson subcontracts in connection with 10 city contracts out of thousands of contracts that were procured correctly. And these contracts were performed on time, on budget, and very well, winning state and federal awards. Number 2. Kilpatrick utilized almost $14,000, 0.8%, of private civic fund monies approved by the KCF's private board of directors from money raised by private donors with absolutely no public money involved whatsoever for personal expenses over a 5-year period. Money that he paid back in accordance with a private audit before any of his criminal proceedings. No stealing of millions of dollars, no financial loss to the city of Detroit, no extortion, nothing. Does this collection of charges and convictions appear to justify a 28-year prison sentence? If you are not sure about the actual charges, one more thing. At his criminal trial, Kilpatrick was forced to use a defense attorney that was completely compromised. Fact, Jim Thomas, Kilpatrick's trial attorney, accompanied a government witness to the grand jury that was set up to indict Kilpatrick. Thomas counseled, coached, and advised this government witness through his grand jury testimony against Kilpatrick. Twice during the government witness's testimony, he asked to talk to his attorney, Mr. Thomas, before answering the question. Fact, Kilpatrick received an indictment the very next day after the government witness's grand jury testimony. Thomas discussed his client, the government witness, with the very prosecutors on Kilpatrick's case. Thomas represented the government witness and Kwame Kilpatrick at the same time while Kilpatrick's grand jury was convened. Thomas never disclosed this to the trial court, nor to Kilpatrick. Fact, when Kilpatrick discovered this egregious conflict of interest while reading grand jury transcripts during preparation for his trial, he immediately confronted his attorney and then went to the court and pleaded for a different attorney. Judge Nancy Edmonds said no. Mr. Thomas has a good reputation in this building. Kilpatrick was railroaded by his judge. He was railroaded by the prosecutors, and most egregiously by his own court-appointed attorney. So now ask yourself, is a 28-year prison sentence justified in this case? No, it's not. Vacate Kwame's 28.